What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate. Now, look, every now and then we try to mix it up for y'all. Because, so look, dependency and consistency is really important. But even within those lanes of consistency, you got to have a little bit of variety. You know what I mean? You don't come home and just eat the same thing every day. Or even if you do, you got a meal prep thing, maybe sometimes you put a little red sauce. Maybe sometimes you put a little green sauce. You got to just, mix it up from time to time. Maybe sometimes you grill it. Maybe sometimes you saute. Maybe sometimes you rotisserie. You got to just... Am I hungry? Yes, I'm hungry, y'all. My bad. Listen, check it out. We have another entry for y'all from our See It to Be It series. Amy C. Waninger, CEO of Lead at Any Level, as well as the author of Network Beyond Bias. She's actually been a member of the team for a while now, so shout out to you, Amy. Yes, thank you very much for all of your work here. And part of her work has been in driving this series called See It to Be It. And the purpose of the series is to actually highlight Black and brown professionals in these very prestigious roles, like within industries that maybe we, and when I say we, I mean Black and brown folks, I see y'all, that we may not always even know exist or envision ourselves in, hence the name of the series, right? So check this out. We're going to go ahead and transition from here. The next thing you're going to hear is an interview with Amy C. Waninger and a super dope professional. I know y'all going to love it. Catch y'all next time. Peace.
Robert, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Amy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. I was hoping that you could tell me a little bit about how you got involved in risk management and what about it appealed to you?
Wow. So I have to go back a little bit because risk management was not a field that I had even thought about because my background is actually HR. And I managed a couple of plants, manufacturing plants. And when I took over one plant, it was in Philadelphia, and they also made me head of plant operations. And the first issue I encountered was an OSHA citation. It was about $160,000. And it kind of threw me into the field of what was this all about and what are we looking at. So I didn't understand the term risk, and this is like in the early 90s when this occurred. And I think it was more of a thing of, the exposure or the things that we had to figure out how we're going to manage them. So one of the things that the owner asked me to do is to look more into what that was all about. And so that was my first exposure to what risk management was. Now, going another 8 years, and at this point now I'm working for Bridgestone. I was overseeing part of their work comp program. And as I was moving further along with that, I got exposed to, from the insurance side and from the claim side of things, of, the exposures and the risk associated with it. And so I wanted to learn more about it. So I looked it up on Yahoo. That was before Google. So Yahoo was a big search engine back then. So I'm dating myself. But Yahoo was a search engine, and it talked about risk management organizations. And I wanted to find out more about it. They directed me to this Risk and Insurance Management Society. And they had a local chapter, the Delaware Valley chapter in the greater Philadelphia area. And I went to their meetings, and that's when I started to really learn more about all the elements that involve risk management. It is a vast operation, and a lot of things that are done, especially from the RIMS perspective, is more volunteer based. So there's a lot of volunteers that were trying to put together risk management programs for their communities, and their communities spread across the world. So that was my first exposure to risk management. The other thing was I found that was very interesting is that it was so interconnected with business. And a lot of times businesses are siloed. You have operations is doing one thing, and HR is doing something else, and finance is doing. They were all kind of siloed. Whereas risk management was really trying to be the gatekeeper for all of those and trying to put them all together and say there are all elements of exposure that will harm the company. We need to find ways to do a better job with that. So I think, short answer to that is that I kind of researched it, fell into risk management. It wasn't a career that I chose, but a career chose me. And so here I am 36 years later, and just really being an advocate for risk management.
That's fantastic. Did you go through any formal training for this, or did you really just research this on your own and kind of pull from these different disciplines?
Yeah, so I did get my CRM, my Certified Risk Manager designation. So I went through those 5 principles of risk management, risk finance, risk factors, risk analysis, and things like that to kind of give you a basis of what risk management was for. And that really, I think, was the biggest education that I got, because I didn't know anything about it. And that was really the exposure. So I did that. I got my certification that way, started to bring some of that information back into my company. But at the same time, I was getting more and more involved with the risk management organization, the RIMS organization. And so through the local chapter, was able to really kind of build a very robust program that was going to benefit the community that we were serving. And then I found it was on a global level. And so I started to get involved with other committees and other councils that handled other parts of what risk management was. And I had the opportunity to serve as their global president last year. So that was it was a crowning achievement to my career thus far.
That is an amazing story. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting to me to hear how many people really fall in love with a career path or even get exposure to a career path through associations.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of folks, and I didn't know about associations, and I think that's true of a lot of people, especially if you're first generation in the professional workplace, you're first generation college student. You may not realize that these associations are even out there, and they're a wonderful way to explore different career possibilities and network with people, find out what they like about their job, what they would change about their job if they could, and really get exposure to a lot of different disciplines along the way.
Yes, you're correct. Absolutely right.
So what's been the biggest surprise to you about risk management? Something that you weren't expecting when you decided to take the leap?
Well, let's see. I think the biggest thing I found that it was, I think the connectivity of it is a universal language. And I think going to the convention at the annual conferences, that was a big thing for me, seeing so many people kind of doing the same thing. Then I realized I wasn't on the island by myself, handling the issues that were happening in my company, sharing some of the best practices, the peer-to-peer connections, and then the networking aspect where the first time you go, you don't know a lot of people. The second time, you know a few more, they introduce you to some people. And after about 3-4 years, and all of a sudden, it's like a family gathering all over again. You're seeing people you haven't seen before. They're introducing you to more people, and so your network just gets bigger and bigger every year.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the future holds for talent needs in risk management? Do you see this as something that's going to be, that there are going to be more jobs in this field, or do you see it as something that maybe, artificial intelligence will be taking over? Are you going to be working with machines and robots in the future, or do you need more people in this space?
So interesting thing about that, and this is one thing I've been championing. I've been talking about the 21st century version of risk management. The 20th century version of risk management is the person, or the risk manager is the person who bought insurance to protect any liabilities for a company. That was the basis of risk management. An insurance person, a person who bought the insurance, or who set up the policies and the policy writing, underwriters and things of that regard. It has since expanded into a multi-dimensional, job description, because IT falls under risk management, HR falls under risk management, finance falls under risk management, safety falls under risk management, audit falls under risk management. So all of these disciplines, any business, anything that a business is associated with has an element of risk. And so the 21st century risk manager is now going to look at things not so much as how much insurance do we need to have in order to cover our loss. They have to look at risk management now from the aspect of saying, what are we going to do to save the company money by putting processes and procedures in place to stop and mitigate the losses that we have? Or, and here's a challenge for the 21st century risk manager, the unknown unknowns, the things you don't even know, that you don't see. Yes, the company is doing great. We've got a 3-year positive trend of losses and things that are happening in that regard. But what else is going to happen around the corner that we don't know about? That's what the future of risk management is. So the digitalization of risk management, that is very key. It's very critical. The next generation, we're looking to them to help lead us in that regard. So my push and my passion has been for 21st century risk managers. They're the ones who understand technology, AI, blockchain, all the things that are out there that we hear that are coming on the horizon. You still need people to manage that level of risk, whether you're working with machines or whether you're doing AI, which is being done right now in the insurance field. AI is now writing insurance policies. So there's a lot of things that still need the people side to drive that and to understand and to direct AI to do those things. And I think my exposure this past year, having traveled around the world a little bit, has shown me that around the world, there are a lot of things that are happening in spaces that we haven't even touched here in the United States. There's a need for people to understand how we can fix these problems. So I talk to college students now, and I say, do you want to be a risk manager? Here's your job. Find the solution to the problem. You say when you go into a company and say, we don't really know what's going on, you're new to the organization, and you start asking questions. Before you start asking questions about why are we doing it this way, ask yourself that question, come up with the answer. When you go into the next meeting and you ask that question, well, why are we doing it this way? And they say, well, we've been doing it this way for 20 years and it's working. Why do you ask that question? When you come up with an answer or a solution that they didn't see, then you're the risk manager. All of a sudden now you're the problem solver. You're the one that's going to help them save money, be relevant, and be able to take that company and go forward with it. The other thing I will say is that the future risk management is critically tied in with strategic thinking, because we're raising a group of students now who are getting risk management degrees. They didn't have that when I went to college. That didn't exist. And so now people are coming out of college with risk management degrees, or they're taking things that are tied in with that. Actuarial, underwriting, even on the broker side, those are all things that they need to know in order to help their company go forward. So I tell people, go into a company. It doesn't matter because there's not a lot of risk management jobs that you can get right out of college. There's not a lot of entry level jobs that are like that. There are some companies that have risk management positions that they don't know what they call it. They put you into a different category, but it's really fighting with risk management. The thing I say to them is understand the mission and vision of your organization. Find out what that is, because that's your basis. That is your starting point to have a conversation with anybody in your company. Once you understand what the mission and vision is, because everybody's connected to that. They have to be. That's the basis of the company. So when you look at that, that's your catalyst to move forward. So yeah, risk management, it's relevant in the 21st century. It's needed. And so, Amy, here's another point to the whole thing. Persons like myself who have been in this industry 35, 40 years, the next 10 years, there's a statistic that says 400,000 of us are going to be sunsetting off into other pursuits. Who's filling that gap? So there's a need, a drastic need for people to fill that gap who, in my opinion, know technology, have grown up only on technology, know digital technology. They live, eat, sleep, breathe it. They're the folks that we need to have in to understand how to take this to the next level, because there are things that aren't even regulated right now. We're talking about AI. Let's talk about drones. Let's talk about autonomous vehicles. There's no legislation for that. They're still trying to figure it out. So who's going to figure this out? So there's a need for that. And that's the answer to the short question.
Sorry. That's perfect. And what you're bringing up is the intersection of private sector initiatives, public sector initiatives. There's a lot of, there are community implications for this beyond the companies, beyond the legislators, but, just really in small towns and cities,
right.
In terms of education.
Yes.
Schools need to be prepared for this. And so I think that this, one of the things I love about the insurance industry as a whole is that it just intersects every other part of the economy. And risk management is a little bit broader even than insurance, in that it intersects all of these things, but it also overlays them in a way that maybe some other disciplines don't. So I like the advice about, if you're a strategic thinker, this is a great place for you.
Exactly. Well, most organizations right now, their focus is on strategic thinking. They're looking at leaders who can put them in a position to be more successful. Anybody can write a policy, and we can say that we're protected, but what does that really mean? And what are the real needs of the organization? Do you need a $10 million writer? Who knows? But that's a person that needs to examine that and find out what it is that they really need. And what are they doing to prevent the incidents or the issues that are happening? What are they looking at so far as other methods and means of making the company more successful without an expense? So I kind of look at like a friend of mine, he used the expression, loss prevention is profit retention. And a lot of times you don't think about it from that perspective, but that's really what it is if you put the elements in place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is brand preservation, reputation, does that fall under the risk management umbrella as well?
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking specifically about, some of the companies that we've heard about in the news lately where they've clearly not had diversity among their decision makers. And they've made horrible, horrible mistakes in the marketplace, and very hurtful mistakes in the marketplace in terms of, how they've treated their workers, how they've treated their consumers, how they've established their brand. Do you see marketing as being maybe a primary stakeholder or a future primary stakeholder in this work?
I would say absolutely so. And to your point, we've seen a lot of things where even in marketing or advertising that they've taken some polarizing images under the guise of, we didn't know it was offensive, but at the same time, it brought them publicity. So there's like a double-edged sword with that. So there's an ethical component, I think, to everything that most people are missing. And the ethical thing is not that it's the right thing to do, it's doing the right thing. And doing the right thing means that you have a responsibility to your shareholders and to your public, whereas a lot of times people will focus on their rights. And we have a right to advertise this, we have a right to market this, we have a right to display this. And they don't look at the responsibility as the other side of that. So is I would say to answer your question, marketing, yes, that's a very big issue. And there's a risk management process that's tied in with that, because the thing you have to look at is if we market the wrong thing, how does it impact the bottom line of the organization? Nike did something just recently with a person who the NFL did not really want to be involved with. It was something that was controversial, kind of brought to people's attentions or something, but at the same time, there was a backlash behind it too. But I think when you talk about marketing, one of the commercials that I like post the Super Bowl was the one on, I think what's the line is, if you call it crazy. And it talked about women and how they were crazy to do that. Women wanted to play sports, or she wanted to run in a marathon, or she wanted to do these things, or she's too emotional, or and they're talking about all these things. Hold on, if that's the case, then let's see, just show them what crazy is. Great advertisement, right? But the reality is that people still don't understand that level of diversity is what is needed, because women are the buying power. I mean, you have women that are 60, 70% of the buying power of this country. You're not gonna cater to that. So the funny thing I found just in my travels is that now the hotels I've been staying at, I've noticed this in the last 10, 12 years, using more and more comforters and duvets and things like that they didn't have back before. Why? Because there are more women travelers. Women want more comfort. And so they designed that to say, well, we're adding more comfort to your stay. Everything is designed around comfort now. I don't mind it. It's not a bad thing.
You're getting some benefit out of that.
But I don't think I would have asked for that, because, if I had a sheet, I'm okay. But a duvet is kind of nice to have, So there are a lot of things that if you don't include the population of which you're serving, you're missing out on a big part of what humanity and what risk management is all about.
Absolutely. To your point about hotels, if I go to a hotel and there's not a counter, enough counter space for my makeup, I don't stay there again. And the reason I don't is because I know that there were not women involved in the design of those hotel rooms. because
That's
no woman would design a bathroom where she couldn't have a place to put her makeup. And so it's like, well,
okay.
Clearly you didn't want me bad enough to invite me back. So.
And if you feel that way and you just happen to share it casually with a friend essentially with another friend, now you have people where they're not, and business people are not going to a certain chain. Mm-hmm. There's a reputational risk that they didn't even realize. So then the people who are marketing and saying, we want to drive more revenue. Everything is about growth and sustainability. We want to drive more revenue. And we know that men like to travel and do this. If you're missing that side of demographic, like you said, that becomes this whole silent killer. And next thing you know, boom, you're gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're going to spend, millions of dollars renovating your property, you better make sure you get all the stakeholders in the room before you cut that check and before it's finished, because then it's too late.
Right.
So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, you've already alluded to RIMS, but I know you're doing some more work in RIMS about, future of talent and diversifying talent in risk management. But what are so we'll just start there. What are some of the things that RIMS is doing to engage, a different kind of workforce maybe than risk management has seen in the past? Right.
So I think one of the things that things happen, the timing is always everything, right? And I'm the first African-American president of this organization. So we've been in existence for about 67 years. So that was thank you. That was a milestone in itself. And I reflect back on a time when they asked me to be on the global board. And the person who called me was a friend of mine, but he was also involved with that whole process of selecting the next person to come on. And first I thought he was kidding with me. And I say, yeah, whatever. You don't have any diversity on the board. So, and then we're going around. And I says, okay, so is this like a backdoor deal? He says, Robert, you can't get in the back door with this organization. You can only get in the front door, and it's only by way of what you do in your merits and leadership and things like that. So I'm like, well, okay, so how did that even happen? So as time goes on, and so now as a president, as I was thinking about my presidency and what I wanted to do, my theme was about legacy. And my theme focused on the fact of we need to know where we came from to know where we're going. If we're talking about risk management being relevant, yes, we need to understand our past. We also need to understand the future and where we're going. Diversity is important. If you don't have diversity, then you're not going to be relevant. Society is dictating that. They're insisting on it. I saw that in my travels around the world, where they're importing diversity. They're importing the talent because they want to have what that is. Companies here in the United States are global. The majority of the big companies have a global presence. And if you don't include the type of marketing, as you said, as a woman, it doesn't have space for your cosmetics, then you're losing out on that part of it. So when I think about what I wanted to expand on as president was diversity and inclusion, that it needs to be something that we get past the conversation of this as a now, something that we talk about. I want to get it to the point where it needs to be a verb. And so we took that, RIMS took that perspective. We struck a task force to delve into whether this was something that as an organization we wanted to be involved with. And I'm pleased to say that the board of directors created a new council, a diversity and inclusion advisory council that was launched this year. And I was asked to be chair of that council. So we've got international presence. We've got women, men. We've got we got the LGBTQ corner covered. We have every element covered when we talk about so far as what we want to do as an organization, because we have to walk that talk, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So as a result of that, it becomes more of a thing where we say, what is the next steps? So what RIMS is going to look at, we're going to dive into this using the collective firepower of the people who are on this council. And some of these people on this council are already in that field, from a global level, from a local level, from an international level. Matter of fact, my vice chair is from New Zealand. So just to kind of give you a perspective that way. But she he brings another perspective to that. So what we want to do is now we want to take this and say, okay, how do we help the next generation understand what this is? How do we help risk managers understand what that is? As a part of the risk management discipline, D&I, or a diverse group, is a must. It can't be something that we just continue to talk about. But I'm really excited about this, and so there's just so much. It's just so much. You know, Amy, when I started my presidency, people were reaching out to me, and the first group that reached out to me was women of color. And they asked me to speak to their group. And then from there, I spoke to the National African American Insurance Association, NAIA. And then there was a Latin organization that asked me to speak to them. And so there was an influx of people who were coming in. And for the first time, RIMS decided that we want to have a D&I meeting at our conference in San Antonio last year. It was set up for about 100, 150 people. I'm standing in front because myself and another person was speaking. And people were filling in, and then they were bringing more chairs in, and they filled all the chairs that they brought in. And the last count was about 250 people that were crammed into that room over something that we thought might be a good idea. And that, I think, was a catalyst for us to say, okay, you know what? We need to take this thing even further. So I'm honored to be able to lead this council going forward, but I just think that there's so much need that has already been done that no one knows about. That's the second part. There's a lot of organizations out there that are doing things that no one knows about. And I think from the inclusive part, we can't just say it's the big organizations who are doing these things. There's other groups who are doing things as well. Let's bring them to the party and have them included to that as well. We need to hear their voice.
Absolutely. It sounds like, with a response like that there was some pent-up demand and that people were excited to have an opportunity to learn more and to participate in this, and even to see, the head of their organization be a history maker. And, that's exciting to me that other groups said, oh, wow, you've made history, come talk to us.
Yes.
I think that's phenomenal.
It is. And it's been last year would have been a whirlwind without that, but because I wanted to make that as my platform, it became even almost double than what I would normally have done, or what a president would normally have done. And so, everything is about an opportunity, right? So right place, right time, right people, and you have to have a passion for it. And I believe in it. I firmly believe in it, because if you don't, I have found in my experience that if you don't have a different perspective outside of your own or people who look like you, then you're going to be doing the same thing that you've always done and thinking that you're successful, patting yourself on the back. Yeah, we did a great job. Did you really? Who did you compare yourself to? Who did you ask? And so, when I bring my significant other into a situation, I say, what do you think about this, and get her perspective? Oh man, that's stuff that I didn't even see. So I think that's the benefit. Yes,
it is. Mm-hmm. So you've obviously done a lot of work to help people feel included in your organization. When do you feel included?
I think that's kind of hard to define, because on the surface, people can say, yeah, we invited you to the meeting. We need you to prepare a report. I think when you become inclusive is when you're part of the decision making. Mm-hmm. And when someone says, what do you think? Outside of the normal group or the people who are called on. I found that for me, when I have a meeting, when I have a lot of folks who are in the room and a lot of different groups in the room, I try to make sure that every voice is heard. That's not how it happens in real life. What happens in real life is that, and my daughters have already attested to this because I've asked them, and they're all professionals. They're all in that business world. One's in defense, and one's in pharmaceuticals. The other one's a nurse, and it's the same thing. The great ideas that they got get shot down because it wasn't their idea. But then someone else picks it up, and all of a sudden it's their idea. So I think the inclusiveness is when someone says, "What do you think?" And they take your idea and say, okay, well, all right, why don't you run with it? Or why don't you lead this project? Or why don't you go ahead and run with it? And So the beauty of RIMS as an organization is that that's exactly what they do, which is exactly where I am today, because every time I kept saying, how come we're doing it this way? And they say, well, what would you do differently? I said, well, we should do that. Oh, great. Why don't you lead that project? And so I ended up leading projects and then becoming treasurer and then secretary and vice president and president of the local chapter. And then you get onto a committee and, well, why don't you do this? And now you're on the board. Well, why don't you do this? And then you're president. So that's the thing that I think. So in my company itself, there's still a long way to go. I think in big companies, because there's such a culture that existed, and that culture is the thing that you need to understand. And that's what I tell a lot of young people. You're going to walk into an organization, you need to understand their culture. Figure out what their culture is first. Understand the culture, understand the language that you need to speak. And by that, I mean that there's certain expressions that opens everyone's ears. There's certain things that happen that everybody says, okay, that's pretty interesting. And it doesn't mean that you have to assimilate. Doesn't mean that you have to change who you are. This means you have to understand the language. Now, you have to bring your spin to it, because as a woman, you're going to bring a different perspective. As a minority, you're going to bring a different perspective. As an LGBTQ person, you're going to bring a different perspective. Those are the perspectives that are needed. And so I think that my drive for D&I now is to highlight the value of all those different levels, but it's a mandatory thing. Right now, it's not. We're creating positions, but I don't see the action as really that needs to be behind it enough, where it becomes a norm, where it's like, well, okay, let me use history as an example. Back in the 30s and 40s, a secretary was a man who was not a field for women. Now, when you talk about a secretary, they don't want to use the word secretary, it's office manager, but it's mostly women. So that we see the trend has changed. And so now people don't even blink twice when you say a secretary or office manager. Oh, yeah, of course, it's a woman. So that's where we need to be when it talks about a diverse workforce. It needs to be something where we're not trying to put a check mark or a check and balance. We're just saying we check the box. You have this person. We've hired a black woman. We've hired a black man. We've hired a gay person or a lesbian or a trans person. And so they're now on our group. But are they inclusive? Are they inclusive? Are they part of the group? And are they accepted for their voice? And I think that's a critical thing. The second part to the inclusion is that it also has to be inclusive of thought. You have 5 generations in the workplace right now. There's no inclusion of thought, because the younger person that comes in, they got some great ideas. Yeah. Okay, Robert, that's great. And we'll hear from you later. So therefore, they have all this energy. You psych them all up. You told them run with this project. They come back and they get slapped down. So after a while, you stifle that growth. You stifle that creativity. And I think that the whole generational issue is another problem that we've got. We've got to be able to bridge that gap. So when I talk about diversity and inclusion, I'm thinking about diversion of thought. I'm thinking about inclusion of thought. That's a critical piece as well.
Absolutely. Robert Cartwright Jr., thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for making history and for sharing that with us.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin from Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.